Stokes.
I'm 4 years of doing this show. I've never been late.
We were just saying that.
How's your plumbing?
Well, we just...
That's a personal question.
Plumbing of the house will be fine.
Okay.
But, the plumber was arriving somewhere this morning. He got there right around 8.
Yes.
I had to show him what was wrong. He sort of put me a bit behind schedule.
That's pretty good, 8, and you're here at 8:36. That's still good.
What did the little one put down the toilet?
No, this is right. That would be with kids our age, that would be the expected guess. It's basement plumbing, utility sink issues. Nothing interesting or exciting.
Fun,
all right.
The utility sink, I think that was installed in the 1940s.
All right.
That'll
needs
do
to
it.
be replaced.
Well, it's a good thing you're here because over the weekend, or I guess on Friday, this sort of popped up. I thought it was dead, and it sort of popped up on Friday, and the Board of Aldermen voted in favor of raising the minimum wage to $11 an hour. David Stokes, you've been somebody who's been outspoken about how this is bad for jobs. They did it because they think it's good for jobs. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're wrong. I think they're very.
Back to you.
And it's terrible public policy. It's also infuriating to see local politicians. This is really no different in my mind than what we see in abusive tickets and funding themselves through that. It's just local politicians taking it upon themselves to give themselves power that they don't have and shouldn't have. And in this case, to do an economically terrible choice of raising the minimum wage in the city of St. Louis and putting the city at a great disadvantage to all the surrounding areas. Now you have an earnings tax, you have a payroll tax, now you're going to combine a higher minimum wage than St. Louis County.
But it's only $11. I mean, it's not $15. Everybody was freaking out over the $15, so they compromised to $11. What's so terrible about passing a law that allows a worker to get paid $11 an hour?
We all want workers to make $11 an hour. We all want workers to make a lot more than that. But this way to do it via local mandates is not the way to go about doing it. It's not the way to succeed at this. And we have a lot of writings on this at showmeinstitute.org from well-known economists in the field as well as fellow staffers. Look at it this way. I've got a friend who's a commercial real estate broker, and I can't name the company that he told me about over the weekend. I wish I could.
Right.
But he said that this was initially passed on Tuesday, finally passed on Friday. And he told me that the day it was initially passed, he had one business that uses start entry-level wages that was going to locate in the city, and they called him and said, it's off. We're not doing this. We cannot invest in the city if they're going to increase these minimum wages. So there's one company that's just out.
Right.
Now, and again, I wish I could name them. I can't. It wouldn't be admissible in court, perhaps.
No, right. And it's anecdotal and whatever else. But
there's going to be a lot of that because it's simply moving. The fast food franchises on Hampton, their labor over the next few years is going to go up 30%. You don't think there won't be fast food franchises that open a mile east in Maplewood?
I mean, 10 in a row, right? And then you cross.
We're going to see this over and over. And it's really, and yes, it's only 11 as opposed to the 15 discussion, and that will reduce the harm that's caused by it, and it's being implemented. So we'll see. Look, maybe the economy will be gangbusters in 2018, and like often happens when the economy is going well, the minimum wage often becomes moot. That's what we'd all vote for. But I think this is a terrible public policy.
So what's your solution for the minimum wage worker who can't make ends meet? I mean, honestly.
My solution for the minimum wage worker is to do what usually happens to minimum wage workers, and that most people don't stay on the minimum wage for a long time. Usually you get that job. For many, the minimum wage, the typical minimum wage worker is still the young person probably enrolled in school. It's their first job. It gets them the resume building experience that they need. And so many minimum wage workers, you take the job, you show up on time, you learn how to do it, and within a year you've gotten those raises. People don't stay on minimum wage for 5 years. I mean, the federal government, Bureau of Labor, has all sorts of excellent stats that can be used to disprove the idea that the minimum wage is made up primarily of single mothers with 3 kids supporting families. That's not the typical minimum wage worker. And for those women who are in that situation, yes, do well at the job and you will get raises and promotions and will no longer be at minimum wage.
One of the interesting votes against this minimum wage was an alderman from the city named Antonio French, who came out and said that it would be very easy for me to vote for this because it's popular. And he was quoted in the paper. I want to say Nick Pister had the story, saying that this will hurt the 16, 17, 18-year-old young black men who I'm trying to get jobs. It will hurt them, and so I'm voting against this.
It is going to hurt them, and Alderman French is completely right on this. You see this throughout, not just in North St. Louis. You see this in the state, sort of tough rural areas. These are not kids who have great internships when they graduate from college to go get a job.
Right.
You need these entry-level positions for them to build up experience and references and resumes, and this is exactly the type of entry-level position that people need. So when you pass this legislation, there are many infuriating things about it, but the most infuriating thing is that you're hurting the people that you are ostensibly trying to help. But if you were trying to actually help people through good economics and rational thought, you wouldn't pass this. What they're trying to do, I think, is just going with emotion rather than rational thought on how you're actually going to help the people who need it most.
They are doing what is popular, right? Because the people who put them in the office, we want a minimum wage increase. So the politicians are just responding to what their constituents want.
And look, some people making minimum wage now are going to get that initial raise that kicks in a few weeks.
Right.
There are winners and losers in this. There will still be some minimum wage jobs in the city in 2018, and those people will be making more than they might otherwise have been making. Although I would say those entry-level people, because the people on it now, if they do a good job, will have had raises and promotions.
Right.
That said, there are also losers, and the losers from this, the jobs that aren't brought into the city because of this new law, the people who are laid off when businesses close or move, those are the very people who can least afford to be hurt by this legislation, and that's why it's such a terrible idea.
And the city as a whole loses because you have fewer businesses, and that's the last thing downtown needs.
But I think
Absolutely.
here's where I think, and you sort of touched on it, David Stokes from the Show Me Institute, and that is, if you're going to start a business, you can start a business on east of Skinker or west of Skinker. And if you're going to start a business where you have minimum wage employees, you're going to do it in the county because the county doesn't have the minimum wage that the city does. So the city has just put themselves at a competitive disadvantage when going out and getting jobs.
They absolutely have. They're already at a competitive disadvantage
through
the earnings and payroll taxes
Right.
that you don't pay in St. Louis County at all.
Right.
So they're just making the competitive disadvantage worse. And what's one of the more infuriating things, and I keep using that word, but it's how I genuinely feel about this, is that Alderman French, who you quoted earlier, and some of the other aldermen who opposed this and voted against it are also, in some cases, the only aldermen who are out there speaking against the corporate welfare and the TIF that we see all the time in the city of St. Louis, and, truth be told, in much of St. Louis County, too. Mm. So what you have in the city now is they might as well hold up a sign that says small business need not apply. Small business need not open here. Because if you're a big business, you may or may not be affected on this, but we'll subsidize you to the point through the TIF or the other deals. We'll subsidize you so much that maybe you'll come out ahead. But it's the small local businesses that they're just, the idea that they don't want them in the city of St. Louis, they're not supporting them, or they're not welcome to apply is very bad public policy. And while the politicians would say that, would disagree strenuously with me on that, their actions belie it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's David Stokes from the Show Me Institute, who is not shy about telling us what he thinks. Where can we read you and when can we see you?
My colleague, Mike Rathbone and John Wright, and we've got some great economists who've been writing on the effects of state and local minimum wages at showmeinstitute.org. We've got a lot of current writings. We did testimony before the Board of Aldermen and just some studies on it as well that I think people will enjoy reading. Again, showmeinstitute.org.
Is your plumber listening? Do you have any instructions for your plumber?
He's probably not. He's in the basement right now, so
he's
I don't know the
knee-deep.
reception
You left
he
him
would
there?
get. And one more thing, we have I should have mentioned this earlier. We have a public policy breakfast discussion on the minimum wage in the city on a week from I think it's the 9th, so 2 days, a week from Wednesday, September 9th. It's in the morning at our offices in the Central West End, and people can come and check it out. All the information on that policy breakfast discussion, which is open to the public, is at showmeinstitute.org.
David Stokes, have a good week.
Thanks, McGraw.
Eight
Thanks, Sam.
forty-six,
Thank you.
Big 550, Kate.